The alarm screamed through the corridors of Research Station 7, its piercing wail echoing off the polished metal walls like the cry of some dying beast. Doctor pressed her palm against the emergency seal, watching the thick blast doors slide shut with mechanical precision. Behind that barrier lay the most dangerous discovery in human history, and somehow, impossibly, it had just gotten worse. "Status report," she barked into her comm unit, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. The station's artificial gravity hummed beneath her feet, the only constant in a situation that every protocol in the book. "Containment breach in Sector 7, came the crackling response from Lieutenant in the security bay. "The iron barriers are holding, but barely. Whatever those things are doing in there, it's causing massive electromagnetic interference." His jaw tightened. 3 days ago, they had been celebrating humanity's first successful deep space mining operation beyond the Helix Nebula. The asteroid they had selected appeared to be rich in rare minerals, a discovery that could revolutionize human technology and finally give their species the edge they needed in the vast, hostile galaxy. Instead, they had cracked open something that should have remained buried in the cold depths of space. The creatures inside were unlike anything in the databases. They resembled dragons from ancient Earth mythology, but these beings pulsed with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around them. Their scales shifted between deep purple and brilliant silver, and when they moved, space itself seemed to ripple. The science team had dubbed them star dragons, for lack of a better term, though that name felt inadequate for beings that appeared to manipulate fundamental forces with the casual ease of breathing. "Doctor," called Dr. Martinez from his workstation, his face pale as he stared at the readings cascading across his screens. "The energy signatures are off the charts. These creatures aren't just bioluminescent. They're channeling stellar radiation somehow, converting it into something I've never seen before." Moved to his station, her trained eyes scanning the incomprehensible data. The numbers painted a picture that challenged everything humanity thought they knew about physics and biology. Are they hostile? Unknown, they haven't attempted to breach containment, but their mere presence is causing spatial distortions. The iron barriers are the only thing keeping them contained, and even those are showing stress fractures. The discovery of iron's unique properties against these beings had been accidental. When the first survey team had attempted to approach the nest, the creatures had recoiled from the iron composite tools as if burned. It was humanity's one advantage, their single piece of leverage in a situation that could easily spiral into extinction-level consequences. Walked to the observation deck, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet corridor. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see into the containment chamber where 5 young star dragons huddled together. They were small, perhaps the size of house cats, but their presence warped the air around them like heat mirages. Their eyes held an intelligence that made her skin crawl, ancient and alien, yet somehow familiar. "Ma'am," Lieutenant's voice crackled through the comm again. "We have a situation in Sector 12. Sir is requesting permission to approach the containment area." His blood ran cold. Sir was officially listed as a cultural, but everyone on the station knew his real purpose. He was a knight, one of the last members of humanity's most ancient warrior order, kept alive in the modern era for situations exactly like this. When diplomacy failed and science reached its limits, sometimes the old ways were humanity's only hope. She said immediately, "Under no circumstances is anyone to approach those barriers." "Ma'am, he says he's not requesting permission. He's informing you as a courtesy." Cursed under her breath. Of course. Knights didn't follow civilian authority when lives were at stake. It was both their greatest strength and most infuriating weakness. She grabbed her emergency kit and headed for Sector 12, her mind racing through containment protocols and emergency procedures. The corridors of 7 had been designed for efficiency, not comfort. Bare metal walls lined with conduits and access panels created a maze that could confuse newcomers, but knew every turn by heart. She passed other crew members hurrying to their emergency stations, their faces tense with the knowledge that they were dealing with forces beyond human comprehension. She found Sir in the staging area outside Sector 12, methodically checking his equipment with the calm precision of someone who had faced impossible odds before. He was not what most people expected of a knight. No gleaming armor or ceremonial sword decorated his lean frame. Instead, he wore practical combat gear adapted for space operations, and his weapons were modern plasma rifles and force projectors. The only indication of his ancient calling was the simple iron ring on his right hand, worn smooth by generations of use. "Sir," said, trying to keep the authority in her voice despite knowing it was useless, "I cannot allow you to proceed." He looked up from his gear check, his gray eyes meeting hers with uncomfortable directness. Was 43 years old, a veteran of the conflicts and the Titan mining disputes. His face bore the weathered look of someone who had spent years in hostile environments, but his movements retained the fluid grace that marked all true knights. "Doctor," he said with a slight nod, "I appreciate your concern, but this is exactly why my order exists. When science reaches its limits, when protocol fails, sometimes the old methods are the only path forward. Those creatures could kill you instantly. We don't even understand what they're capable of." Attached a scanner to his belt and checked the charge on his plasma rifle. "Perhaps, but they're young and they're afraid. That much is obvious even to a simple knight." Wanted to argue, but she had seen the footage from the Discovery. The star dragons had been found clustered together in what appeared to be a nest, their movements protective and fearful rather than aggressive. Still, fear could make any creature dangerous, especially one that could manipulate fundamental forces. "At least tell me your plan," she said. Shouldered his rifle and moved toward the access corridor. "No plan, Doctor, just an old promise." Before she could ask what he meant, he was gone, disappearing into the maze of corridors that led to the containment zone. Rushed to the observation deck, arriving just in time to see him enter the outer chamber of the containment area. The star dragons reacted immediately to his presence. Their inner light pulsed brighter, and the spatial distortions around them intensified. Through the monitors, could see reality bending around the creatures like funhouse mirrors. Stood perfectly still in the outer chamber, separated from the beings by a wall of pure iron 3 meters thick. "Sir," she called through the comm system, "you're registering massive energy fluctuations. Please evacuate immediately." His voice came back calm and steady. "Doctor, I need you to cut all monitoring equipment in this chamber. Visual, audio, everything." "I cannot do that. Protocols require." "This isn't about protocols anymore." Stepped closer to the iron barrier, and the star dragons pressed themselves against it from the other side. Their movements were clearly agitated, but not aggressive. They seemed to be trying to reach him through the metal. "Some things require privacy to develop properly. Trust me." Stared at the monitors, watching an impossible scene unfold. The creatures were making sounds now, high-pitched chirps and trills that somehow carried through the supposedly soundproof barriers. Had removed his helmet and was speaking, though she couldn't make out the words through the interference. "Ma'am," Dr. Martinez called from his station. "The energy readings are stabilizing. Whatever he's doing, it's working." Against every instinct, reached for the monitoring controls. "All stations, cut feeds to Containment Zone 7. Sir has operational authority for the next 60 minutes. The screens went black, leaving only the knowledge that somewhere behind those iron walls, a human knight was attempting something that had never been tried before in the history of their species. Stood alone in the chamber, feeling the weight of ancient responsibility settle on his shoulders. The Order of the Iron Ring had been founded 800 years ago, when humanity first ventured beyond Earth's protective embrace. Their purpose was simple: to stand between civilization and the unknown, to bridge the gap between human understanding and alien reality. The star dragons pressed against the barrier with increasing urgency. Their chirps had become more complex, almost musical in their patterns. Had spent years studying as part of his training, and he recognized the basic structure of communication even if the specific meanings eluded him. "Easy," he said softly, his voice carrying the same tone he had once used to calm frightened horses during his youth on the farming colonies. "Easy, little ones. I'm not going to hurt you." The largest of the 5 creatures, barely the size of a small dog, tilted its head at the sound of his voice. Its eyes were like liquid starlight, ancient beyond measure yet somehow innocent. When it chirped again, the sound was softer, questioning. Slowly reached into his pack and a ration bar, breaking off a small piece. He placed it on the narrow ledge that ran along the base of the iron barrier. The creatures watched with intense focus, their inner light pulsing in unison. The largest star dragon extended what appeared to be a tongue of pure energy, somehow reaching through the molecular structure of the iron to touch the offered food. The metal barrier remained intact, but the creature had found a way to interact with objects on the other side. When it tasted the ration, Its entire body flared with brilliant light, and it made a sound that could only be described as pleased. "You like that, do you?" Smiled despite the situation. He had seen that reaction before in the young of dozens of different species across the galaxy. Universal constants were rare, but the enthusiasm of the young for new experiences seemed to cross all species boundaries. The other four star dragons pressed closer, their chirps becoming more insistent. Broke off more pieces of the ration bar, placing them along the ledge. As each creature tasted the food, their agitation decreased and their light took on warmer hues. "That's better," said, settling into a cross-legged position on the floor facing the barrier. "Now, let's see if we can figure out what you're trying to tell me." The star dragons seemed to understand that he was no longer afraid. Their movements became more relaxed, though they remained pressed against the iron barrier. The largest one made a complex series of chirps and trills, its head tilted as if waiting for a response. Tried to mimic the sound pattern, his human vocal cords struggling with the harmonic frequencies. The result was crude and probably incomprehensible, but the star dragons reacted with what could only be described as excitement. Their lights flared brighter, and they began a chorus of sounds that seemed almost like laughter. "So you think I'm funny, do you?" chuckled. "Fair enough. I probably sound like I'm speaking with a mouth full of rocks." He tried again, this time focusing on the rhythm rather than the exact pitch. The star dragons listened intently, and when he finished, the largest one repeated the pattern back to him with slight modifications. It was clearly teaching him, the way a parent might correct a child's pronunciation. Hours passed in this strange lesson. Found himself learning not just sounds, but gestures and light patterns that seemed to carry meaning. The star dragons were remarkably patient teachers, repeating concepts until he grasped the basics and celebrating his small victories with bursts of warm light. Gradually, patterns emerged. The creatures were not just trying to communicate with him, they were trying to claim him. The sounds they made most frequently translated roughly to concepts of family, protection, and belonging. When finally understood what they were asking, he sat in stunned silence. They wanted him to be their parent, their papa, in the crude translation his mind provided. Somehow, these beings that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality had decided that this particular human knight was meant to care for them. The implications were staggering. These creatures were clearly more than animals, possibly more intelligent than humans in ways that science couldn't measure. Yet they were also children, lost and afraid in an environment they didn't understand. Their nest had been destroyed when the mining operation cracked open their asteroid home, leaving them orphaned and alone. Looked at the 5 pairs of starlight eyes watching him with desperate hope, and felt the weight of decision settle on his shoulders. Everything he had been trained for, everything the Order represented, came down to this moment. The choice between humanity's safety and the needs of innocent children, regardless of their species. He reached out and placed his palm against the iron barrier. The star dragons immediately pressed their small forms against the metal from the other side, their lights pulsing in perfect synchronization with his heartbeat. "Yes," he said softly. "Yes, little one's papa's here." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The star dragons burst into brilliant light, their joy so intense it caused the iron barriers to vibrate like tuning forks. Their songs filled the chamber with harmonies that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond the normal 3, and for a moment felt their emotions as clearly as his own. Love, pure, unconditional love from beings whose very existence challenged humanity's place in the universe. They had chosen him not because of his strength or knowledge, but because he had shown them kindness when they were afraid. Activated his comm unit with trembling fingers. "Doctor, we need to discuss some significant changes to the containment protocols." "Sir, what's your status?" He looked at the 5 star dragons still pressed against the barrier, their lights now calm and content. "I'm a father, Doctor, and we need to figure out how to make this work." The silence on the comm stretched for long moments before his voice returned, carefully controlled. "Sir, please clarify your statement." "The Star Dragons have claimed me as their parental figure. They're not hostile, Doctor. They're children, and they've been orphaned by our mining operation. The question now is whether humanity is ready to take responsibility for what we've accidentally destroyed." Stood and gathered his equipment, knowing that the real challenge was just beginning. He had established communication and earned trust. But now came the harder task of convincing an entire research station that humanity's future might depend on their willingness to adopt 5 alien children who could reshape reality with their emotions. The Star Dragons watched him prepare to leave, their lights dimming with obvious distress. He pressed his hand against the barrier one more time, feeling their presence like a warm glow in his mind. "I'll be back," he promised. "Papa has to talk to some very stubborn humans, but I'll be back." Their answering song followed him all the way back to the staging area, a melody of trust and hope that would haunt his dreams for years to come. Behind him, 5 baby star dragons settled down to wait for their human father to return, their light casting strange shadows on the iron walls that contained their new world. The real test was about to begin. The emergency conference room on 7 had never been designed for the kind of discussion currently taking place. Doctor sat at the head of the polished metal table, watching the faces of the station's senior staff as they processed Sir's report. The silence stretched uncomfortably long, broken only by the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Commander Sarah, the station's military liaison, was the first to speak. "Let me understand this correctly, sir. You're telling us that 5 alien entities of unknown capabilities have somehow psychically bonded with you and now consider you their father figure." Nodded calmly from his position at the far end of the table. He had cleaned up since his time in the containment chamber, but there was something different about him now. An alertness, as if part of his attention was always focused elsewhere. "That's correct, Commander. The Star Dragons have formed what appears to be a familial bond. They're young, probably equivalent to human toddlers in terms of emotional development, though their actual intelligence may far exceed ours." Dr. Martinez leaned forward, his tablet displaying streams of data collected during his interaction with the creatures. The energy readings support his assessment. When Sir made contact, the spatial distortions stabilized. Their electromagnetic emissions shifted to patterns that suggest contentment rather than distress. Commander's expression remained skeptical. "And you believe these children pose no threat to station security?" "I believe they pose no intentional threat," replied carefully. "But they're capable of manipulating fundamental forces in ways we don't understand. A tantrum from a human child breaks toys. A tantrum from a Star Dragon child could potentially crack the station's hull." The implications of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Watched her senior staff as they contemplated the impossible situation they found themselves in. First contact with alien intelligence was supposed to follow careful protocols, involve teams of specialists and years of preparation. Instead, they had 5 cosmic infants who had apparently decided that a single human knight was their guardian. "What are you proposing?" asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Stood and activated the wall display, showing a schematic of the containment area. "I propose we modify our approach entirely. These beings aren't prisoners or specimens to be studied. They're refugees, orphaned by our mining operation. Our moral obligation is clear, but the practical challenges are significant." He highlighted sections of the display as he spoke. "The iron barriers are essential for safety, but they're also traumatizing the young ones. They understand that I can't properly care for them through a 3-meter wall. We need to find a way to create a safe interaction space." Doctor, the station's chief engineer, examined the schematics with professional interest. The power requirements alone would be staggering. These creatures exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Any habitat we create would need to account for spatial distortions, energy fluctuations, and electromagnetic interference. "Not to mention the liability issues," added Lieutenant from the security station. "If something goes wrong, if they have another emotional episode, we could lose the entire station." Turned from the display to face the room directly. "Ladies, I understand your concerns, but we're approaching this backwards. These beings aren't a problem to be contained. They're an opportunity to prove that humanity is ready for true galactic citizenship." Commander's laugh was bitter. "Galactic citizenship? Sir, 3 days ago we didn't even know these things existed. Now you want us to play adoptive parents to cosmic entities that could vaporize us without effort." "Yes," replied simply, "because that's what parents do. They take responsibility for children, regardless of the risk to themselves." Felt a headache building behind her temples. The political ramifications alone were staggering. How did you explain to Colonial Command that their most advanced research station had become an impromptu nursery for alien children? How did you justify the resource expenditure required to care for beings whose basic needs were still completely unknown? Sir, she said carefully, I appreciate the emotional appeal of your position, but we have practical concerns that go beyond sentiment. These creatures are clearly powerful enough to be strategic assets. The military implications alone. His expression hardened. Doctor, with respect, the moment you start thinking of children as strategic assets is the moment you lose your humanity. These beings chose to trust us. That trust comes with obligations. The debate continued for another 2 hours, ranging from technical feasibility to philosophical implications. Plans were proposed and discarded, contingencies outlined and rejected. Through it all, remained calm but implacable, steadily wearing down objections with a combination of logical argument and moral authority. Finally, called for a recess. As the senior staff filed out to consider their options, she approached privately. Off the record, she said, what aren't you telling us? Your certainty about their intentions, your confidence that this will work. There's more to this than you're sharing. Was quiet for a long moment, his gaze focused on something beyond the conference room walls. When I made contact with them, Doctor, for just a moment I felt what they feel. The bond isn't just one way. They're not just claiming me as their father. They're making me into one. Felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean? It means that I can sense them now, even from here. Their emotions, their needs, their fears. It means that if something happens to them, it happens to me as well. And it means that I'll do whatever is necessary to protect them, regardless of the consequences to myself or anyone else. The calm certainty in his voice was more frightening than any threat. Realized that they weren't just dealing with 5 alien children anymore. They were dealing with a human knight whose protective instincts had been amplified by forces beyond their understanding. How much time do we have? She asked. Closed his eyes and could see tension lines around them that hadn't been there before. They're getting hungry, and normal food won't sustain them much longer. I estimate we have perhaps 18 hours before they become distressed enough to attempt breaking containment. And if they do, then we find out whether the station's hull is stronger than a star dragon's love for their papa. That evening found herself in the observation deck overlooking the containment area. The monitoring equipment had been restored, and she watched the 5 star dragons huddled together in the center of their chamber. Their lights pulsed in unison, a slow rhythm that seemed almost like heartbeats. Dr. Martinez joined her carrying a tablet full of analysis reports. I've been studying the energy patterns, he said without preamble. These beings don't just manipulate stellar radiation, they feed on it. Their cellular structure, if we can call it that, processes cosmic energy the way our cells process glucose. Can we provide what they need? Possibly, the station's fusion reactors produce similar radiation signatures, but the containment requirements, he shook his head. We'd essentially be building a miniature star chamber. The risks are enormous. Watch the star dragons shift position, always maintaining contact with each other. Dr. Martinez, in your professional opinion, are these beings intelligent? Beyond any doubt. Their communication patterns show complex grammatical structures. They understand cause and effect, demonstrate emotional intelligence, and learn at rates that exceed anything in our databases. If these are children, then the adult members of their species are likely more intelligent than humans by orders of magnitude. The implications were staggering. First contact with a superior alien intelligence was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement. Instead, they had accidentally destroyed an alien nursery and were now responsible for raising the survivors. Dr. Martinez continued, there's something else. The spatial distortions around the star dragons aren't random. They're creating patterns almost like architecture. I think they're trying to build something. His blood ran cold. What kind of something? Unknown, but the mathematics involved are incredibly sophisticated. Whatever they're planning, it's beyond our current understanding of physics. A soft chime from the intercom interrupted their conversation. Doctor to Containment Area 7, sir, is requesting immediate access. Rushed through the corridors, arriving at the containment staging area to find suiting up with grim efficiency. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly as he checked his equipment. Sir, what's happening? They're in distress, he said without looking up. Something's wrong. I can feel their fear, their confusion. They need me. checked the monitoring displays, and felt her heart skip. The Star Dragon's lights were flickering erratically, and their movements had become agitated. The spatial distortions around them were intensifying, causing visible warping of the containment chamber's walls. "Sir, the energy readings are off the charts. It's not safe." Was already moving toward the access corridor. "Doctor, safety stopped being relevant the moment I accepted them as my children. Monitor from a distance if you wish, but don't interfere." Watched helplessly as he disappeared into the containment area. On the displays, she could see the Star Dragons react to his presence with obvious relief. Their erratic lights stabilized, and they pressed themselves against the iron barrier with desperate urgency. Through the communication system, she could hear speaking in the strange harmonic patterns he had learned earlier. The Star Dragons responded with increasingly complex songs, their lights pulsing in rhythm with the conversation. Dr. Kame's voice through the comm, tense with concentration. "They're trying to tell me something important, something about their nest, their family. I'm getting images, memories shared through the bond." "What kind of memories?" "Their parents. They remember their parents, and they remember what happened to them." Felt a chill of premonition. "Sir, please elaborate." "The asteroid we cracked wasn't just their nest, Doctor. It was a generational ship. These children were part of a refugee convoy fleeing some kind of cosmic catastrophe. When we broke open their ship, we didn't just destroy their home. We killed their entire family." The silence that followed was deafening. Stared at the displays, watching 5 orphaned children whose parents had died in humanity's search for resources. The moral weight of that realization settled on her shoulders like lead. "They're showing me more," continued, his voice strained. "The catastrophe they were fleeing, something called the Void Hunger, a force that consumes stellar radiation and leaves dead space in its wake. Their species has been running from it for generations." "Are they asking for help?" "No, Doctor, they're trying to help us. The patterns they've been creating, the spatial distortions, they're trying to warn us. The Void Hunger is coming to this sector, and we're directly in its path." His mind raced through the implications. If was right, then these 5 orphaned children weren't just refugees seeking care. They were harbingers of a threat that could consume entire star systems. "How long do we have?" "According to their memories, perhaps 3 standard months before it reaches the outer system. Doctor, we need to evacuate every human settlement within 50 light years." Closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions. They could abandon the Star Dragons and flee, leaving 5 children to face their species' ancient enemy alone. They could try to transport the beings, though the technical challenges might prove insurmountable. Or they could stay and fight alongside creatures whose power they didn't understand against a threat beyond human comprehension. "Sir," she said finally, "ask them if they know how to fight this void hunger." The conversation that followed lasted hours, filled with harmonic exchanges and light patterns that hurt to watch directly. When finally emerged from the containment area, his face was grim but determined. "They know, Doctor, their species has been fighting the void hunger but it requires a level of cooperation and trust that we've never attempted before." "What do they need?" Looked her directly in the eyes, and she saw the weight of cosmic responsibility reflected there. "They need a family, Doctor, not just me, but all of us. They need to know that humanity will stand with them, protect them, and allow them to protect us in return." Nodded slowly, understanding that this moment would define humanity's future among the stars. They could remain a species that took resources and gave nothing back, or they could become something greater. "Dr. Martinez," she said into her comm unit, "begin designing a proper habitat for our guests. Doctor, I need you to work out the technical requirements for a fusion-fed environment. Commander, prepare evacuation protocols for the outer colonies, but don't implement them yet." She turned back to, seeing relief and gratitude in his expression. "Sir, it appears that humanity is about to become a foster family on a cosmic scale. I hope you're right about this." "So do I, Doctor, so do I." Behind the iron barriers, 5 Star Dragon children pulsed with gentle light, their songs carrying hope and warning in equal measure. The real test of humanity's character was about to begin, and the fate of entire worlds hung in the balance. The construction of Habitat 7 took 36 hours of non-stop work by every available crew member on 7. Doctor had outdone herself, creating a hybrid environment that could sustain both human and star dragon physiology while maintaining the essential safety barriers. The result was unlike anything in human engineering. A translucent dome of reinforced materials surrounding a carefully controlled fusion reaction, with iron composite walkways that allowed human access without causing distress to the young star dragons. Sir stood on the primary observation platform, watching the final calibrations with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Through the bond he now shared with the star dragon children, he could feel their eager anticipation. They had been patient during the construction, but their need for proper nourishment was becoming critical. The makeshift energy supplements Dr. Martinez had provided were like giving water to someone dying of thirst, temporarily helpful but ultimately insufficient. "Final systems check complete," announced Doctor through the comm system. "Fusion core is stable, radiation shielding is optimal, and environmental controls are responding normally. We're ready for habitat activation." Doctor joined on the observation platform, her expression reflecting the exhaustion they all felt. "Are you certain about this? Once we activate the fusion core and transfer them to the new habitat, there's no going back. We'll be committed to caring for them indefinitely." Placed his hand against the iron railing, feeling the subtle vibrations from the contained fusion reaction below. "Doctor, they're dying in that containment cell. I can feel their life force weakening every hour we delay. This isn't a choice anymore. It's a necessity." The past day and a half had been a whirlwind of impossible engineering challenges and moral debates. The colonial command had been of the situation, though the full details had been carefully edited to avoid panic. The official report described the discovery of intelligent alien refugees requiring temporary humanitarian assistance. The reality was far more complex and potentially catastrophic. Dr. Martinez approached with his latest analysis reports, his face showing the strain of working with technologies that challenged fundamental understanding. "Sir, I need you to understand what we're asking of these beings. The transition from containment to the habitat will require them to consciously modulate their energy output. If they lose control, even for a moment, the fusion reaction could destabilize." "What would that mean for the station?" "Total destruction within seconds," Dr. Martinez replied bluntly. "The explosion would be visible from 3-star systems away." Nodded grimly. The risks had been explained multiple times, but the alternative was watching 5 innocent children slowly fade away, while humanity dithered over safety protocols. "They understand the danger, Dr. Martinez. The bond we share allows them to sense my emotions, my knowledge. They're more afraid of hurting me than of dying themselves." Commander's voice crackled through the comm system from the security station. "All personnel not directly involved in the transfer operation are to evacuate to the emergency pods. This is not a drill. Repeat, all non-essential personnel to emergency evacuation stations." Looked at the evacuation order with resignation. "Sir, I'm ordering you to evacuate as well. Dr. Martinez can handle the technical aspects of the transfer remotely." "Respectfully, Doctor, no," turned from the observation platform to face her directly. "Those children have been alone and afraid for days. They're about to trust us with their lives in a way that requires absolute faith. I will not abandon them at the most critical moment. If something goes wrong, then I'll die alongside my children, as any parent would." The stark simplicity of his statement silenced further arguments. Watched as her staff began evacuating the sector, leaving only the essential personnel needed for the transfer operation. Through the monitors, she could see the star dragons pressed against their containment barriers, their lights pulsing with a rhythm that matched its heartbeat. Doctor remained in the engineering bay, her hands steady on the controls that would either save 5 alien children or destroy them all. "Sir, I need to coordinate the transfer with your bond connection. When I open the barriers, you'll need to guide them to the habitat before the containment field collapses." Moved to the communication station, his fingers finding the harmonic controls with practiced ease. The strange musical language he had learned felt more natural each time he used it, as if the star dragons were teaching him not just words, but an entirely different way of thinking. "Beginning barrier deactivation sequence," announced Doctor, iron shields retracting in 30 seconds. Through the bond, felt the star dragons' excitement spike into near panic. They understood what was happening, but the prospect of leaving their familiar prison was terrifying. He began speaking to them in their harmonic language, his voice carrying reassurance and love across the impossible gulf between species. The iron barriers retracted with mechanical precision, and for the first time in days, nothing stood between the Star Dragons and the rest of the station except's ability to guide them safely. The young creatures emerged from their containment slowly, their forms shifting and flowing as they adapted to the larger space. Reality bent around them like heated glass, creating rainbow distortions that hurt to watch directly. "Easy, little ones," said softly, extending his hand toward them. "Papa's here. Everything is going to be all right." The largest star dragon, the one who had first made contact, approached cautiously. Its form was still small, barely the size of a house cat, but the energy patterns surrounding it could have powered a small city. When it touched its outstretched hand, the contact created a brilliant flash of light that left afterimages dancing across everyone's vision. The bond deepened instantly. Could suddenly perceive reality through the Star Dragon's senses, seeing the universe as a complex web of energy patterns and dimensional intersections. The station around them appeared fragile and temporary, like a soap bubble floating in an ocean of cosmic forces. But there was also warmth, safety, and the overwhelming presence of love that transcended species boundaries. "Doctor," said, his voice strained by the dual perception, "initiate habitat activation. They're ready." The fusion core came online with a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through multiple dimensions. The Star Dragons reacted with obvious delight, their lights brightening as they sensed the familiar radiation patterns of their natural food source. One by one, they moved toward the habitat dome, their movements becoming more graceful and confident with each step. Dr. Martinez monitored the energy readings with growing amazement. "Incredible! They're not just feeding on the radiation, they're modulating it, refining it somehow. The fusion reaction is actually more stable with them present." Guided the Star Dragons into their new home, watching as they explored the carefully designed environment with childlike wonder. The habitat included areas for rest, play, and growth, all built around the central fusion core that would provide their sustenance. Iron walkways allowed human access while respecting the creature's need for space free from the metal that caused them discomfort. The largest star dragon approached one of the viewing windows and pressed its small form against the transparent barrier. Through the bond, felt its gratitude and contentment, emotions so pure they brought tears to his eyes. The other four quickly joined their sibling, all of them radiating happiness that seemed to warm the very air around them. "Transfer complete," announced Doctor with obvious relief. "All systems stable, subjects secure in habitat environment." Activated the all-clear signal, and within minutes the evacuated personnel began returning to their stations. The crisis had passed, but knew that the real work was just beginning. Caring for 5 Star Dragon children would require resources, patience, and understanding that humanity had never needed before. "Sir," came a new voice through the comm system. "This is Admiral Torres from Colonial Command. Please report to the communication center for immediate briefing." His expression darkened. The Admiral wasn't supposed to arrive for another week. Something must have happened. Felt a chill of premonition. The Star Dragons in the habitat suddenly became agitated, their lights flickering with distress. Through the bond, he sensed their fear, not of the Admiral, but of something far more terrible approaching from the outer system. The communication center was a small compartment filled with quantum relay equipment that allowed near-instantaneous contact with Colonial Command headquarters. Admiral Maria Torres appeared on the main display with the sharp clarity that indicated her message was being transmitted in real time across hundreds of light years. "Sir," the Admiral began without preamble, "I need a complete assessment of the alien entities currently in your custody. We've detected massive energy fluctuations in the outer system that correspond exactly with the timeline you provided." Straightened to attention. "Admiral, the Star Dragons have confirmed that the void hunger is approaching this sector. Based on their shared memories, we have approximately 10 weeks before it reaches the outer colonies." "How reliable is this intelligence?" "Completely reliable, ma'am. The bond I share with these beings allows direct access to their memories and knowledge. They've been fighting this threat for thousands of years." Admiral Torres was silent for several moments, her expression grim. "Sir, I'm ordering the immediate evacuation of all civilian populations from the outer colonies. Military assets will remain to study this threat and determine our response options. Admiral, respectfully, evacuation won't be sufficient. The void hunger consumes stellar energy. It will follow human settlements wherever they go, draining the stars that sustain our colonies. Running will only delay the inevitable. Then what do you propose? Felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settle on his shoulders. The Star Dragons know how to fight it, Admiral, but they're children, orphaned and traumatized. They need time to heal, to grow, to learn to trust humanity completely. If we can provide that, they might be willing to teach us their defensive techniques. And if they can't or won't? Through the bond, sensed the Star Dragon's awareness of the conversation. They understood the stakes, understood what was being asked of them. Their response was immediate and clear. They would fight alongside their human family, regardless of the cost to themselves. Then humanity's expansion into this sector ends here, Admiral. The void hunger has consumed dozens of star systems. The Star Dragon's people have been fleeing from it for. We're their last hope and their ours. Admiral Torres nodded slowly. Sir, I'm authorizing unlimited resources for the care and support of these entities. Whatever they need, whatever you need, will be provided. The survival of human civilization in this sector may depend on your success as their guardian. Understood, Admiral. There's one more thing, sir. Long-range sensors have detected other objects in the outer system, moving in formation. The Star Dragon's ship wasn't alone. Felt his blood run cold. Other survivors. Unknown, the objects are too distant for detailed analysis, but they're heading toward our position. ETA approximately 6 weeks. The implications were staggering. More Star Dragons, possibly adult members of the species, were approaching 7. They would arrive just weeks before the void hunger reached the system. The reunion could be joyful or catastrophic, depending on how the adults viewed humanity's custody of their young. Admiral, I recommend maintaining minimal military presence when the others arrive. The Star Dragons value family bonds above all else. Any perceived threat to these children could provoke a hostile response. Noted, sir. You're now officially designated as humanity's first alien guardian, with full authority over all interactions with non-human intelligences in this sector. Don't let us down. The communication ended, leaving alone with the weight of impossible responsibility. Through the habitat windows, he could see the Star Dragon children playing in their fusion-lit environment, their lights creating patterns of joy and contentment. They trusted him completely, believed that their human papa could protect them from anything. Joined him at the observation window, her expression thoughtful. A species capable of fleeing across the galaxy, adults who might be more powerful than anything humanity has ever encountered, and a cosmic threat that consumes entire star systems. Sir, have we gotten ourselves into something beyond human comprehension? Watch the Star Dragons chase patterns of light around their habitat, their movements graceful and joyful despite the cosmic dangers approaching. Doctor, humanity has always been at our best when facing impossible odds. These children chose us as their family. Now we have to prove worthy of that trust. And if we fail, then we fail together, as families do. The Star Dragons sensed his presence and moved to the viewing window, pressing their small forms against the barrier. Through the bond, felt their love and trust, emotions so powerful they seemed to reshape reality around them. Whatever came next, whatever threats approached from the darkness between stars, they would face it as a family. The real test was still ahead of them, but for now, 5 alien children had found safety in human hands, and humanity had taken its first step toward true galactic citizenship. The fusion core hummed with steady power, the Star Dragons sang their harmonic songs of contentment, and somewhere in the outer darkness, their family was coming home. The approaching ships appeared first as distortions in space itself, reality bending around vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Sir stood in the primary observatory of 7, watching long-range sensors track the impossible geometries of Star Dragon technology. Through his bond with the 5 children in Habitat 7, he could feel their growing excitement and anticipation. Their family was coming home. Distance to contact, approximately 18 hours, announced Lieutenant from the tactical station. Sir, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. These ships don't appear to follow standard physics. nodded, his attention divided between the sensor readings and the emotional turbulence flowing through his connection to the Star Dragon children. The little ones had become increasingly agitated over the past week, their lights flickering with patterns he was still learning to interpret. Joy mixed with fear, hope tempered by uncertainty about how their parents might react to their human caretakers. Doctor approached with a tablet displaying the latest communication attempts. We've tried every frequency and protocol in our systems. The approaching vessels aren't responding to standard hails. They're listening, said quietly, feeling the subtle awareness that came through the bond. The children are in contact with them. I can sense the connection, but it's beyond my ability to interpret. Through the observation windows, Habitat 7 glowed with the steady light of its fusion core. The 5 star dragons had arranged themselves in a complex pattern around the energy source, their forms pooling in perfect synchronization. To human eyes, they appeared to be dancing, but could sense the deeper purpose through their bond. They were preparing for judgment. The past 6 weeks had transformed the relationship between humans and star dragons from cautious cooperation to something approaching true family bonds. The children had learned to modulate their energy output to prevent damage to station systems, while the human crew had adapted their routines to accommodate beings who experienced time and space in ways that challenged basic understanding. Dr. Martinez had made remarkable progress in studying star dragon physiology, though every answer raised new questions. The creatures existed simultaneously in normal space and what he termed quantum foam, dimensions where the normal rules of matter and energy didn't apply. They fed on stellar radiation not by consuming it, but by processing it through biological mechanisms that resembled controlled fusion reactions. Most remarkably, they had begun sharing their knowledge with their human caretakers. Found himself understanding concepts that had no equivalent in human language, seeing mathematical relationships that described the fundamental structure of reality. Through the children, humanity was receiving an education in cosmic engineering that could advance their civilization by centuries. "Sir," came Admiral Tor's voice through the quantum communicator, "what's the status of our guests? Are they prepared for contact with their own species?" Considered the question carefully. The Star Dragon children had grown stronger and more confident in their new environment, but they remained traumatized by the loss of their family and their home. Their trust in humanity was absolute, but that trust might complicate their reunion with their own kind. "Admiral, the children are ready, but the situation is complex. They've bonded with us in ways that may be difficult for adult Star Dragons to understand. We need to approach this carefully." "Understood. What are your recommendations?" Felt the Star Dragon's attention focus on the conversation, their awareness allowing them to follow human speech with increasing precision. They were learning as much about their caretakers as the humans were learning about them. "I recommend minimal military presence during the initial contact. The approaching vessels should be met by myself and a small diplomatic team. Any show of force could be interpreted as a threat to the children." "Agreed, sir. You have full authority to negotiate on behalf of humanity. Try not to start an interstellar war." The communication ended just as Doctor's voice echoed through the station. All personnel were detecting massive energy buildups from the approaching vessels. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be spectacular. Rushed to the tactical center, where the main display showed the incoming ships in unprecedented detail. There were 3 of them, each roughly the size of a small moon, their surfaces flowing and shifting like liquid metal. Energy patterns danced across their hulls in displays that rivaled the beauty of stellar auroras. "Estimated time to arrival?" asked. 6 hours and closing," Lieutenant replied. "Sir, the energy patterns match what we've recorded from the children, but by orders of magnitude, if those are military vessels." "They're not," interrupted, certainty flowing through his bond with the Star Dragons. "They're family ships, generational vessels carrying the survivors of their species. The energy displays are communication attempts, not weapons preparation." Dr. Martinez studied the patterns with growing excitement. "Sir, you're right. The harmonic frequencies match the songs the children use for emotional expression. This is a massive musical composition, probably expressing concepts we can't even comprehend." Through Habitat 7's windows, the Star Dragon children had begun responding to their family's approach. Their lights brightened to levels that strained the containment systems, and their songs became complex symphonies that resonated through the station's hull. Felt their emotions through the bond, pure joy mixed with desperate hope that their human family would be accepted by their cosmic one. Doctor said, making a decision that would define humanity's future. I'm going to meet them personally. If this goes wrong, if they reject our custody of their children, then humanity needs to know what we're facing. His expression was grave. Sir, those ships could vaporize our entire fleet without effort. Are you certain about this? Doctor, these children trusted us with their lives when they had no reason to believe we meant well. Now their parents are coming to reclaim them, and they'll judge humanity based on how we've cared for their young. I refuse to meet that judgment from behind military shields. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation and growing tension. Donned his ceremonial knight's gear, knowing that the symbolic weight of his position might be humanity's only advantage in the coming encounter. The Star Dragon children watched him prepare through the habitat windows, their lights pulsing with complex emotions that spoke of love, fear, and desperate hope. As the alien vessels approached the outer edge of 7 sensor range, reality itself began to warp around them. Space folded and twisted in their wake, creating visual distortions that hurt to observe directly. The station's instruments registered energy readings that shouldn't have been possible, particles that existed in mathematical states that violated known physics. Contact in 30 minutes, announced Lieutenant. All departments report ready. Made his way to the station's primary docking bay, which had been hastily converted into a diplomatic reception area. The space was stark and functional, but it represented humanity's best effort at creating a neutral meeting ground. Behind him, through the observation windows connecting to Habitat 7, the Star Dragon children maintained their complex formation around the fusion core. The first indication of arrival wasn't visual but emotional. Felt the Star Dragon's joy explode through their bond as familiar presences touched their consciousness. The children's songs became triumphant celebrations that seemed to vibrate through multiple dimensions, their lights creating patterns that briefly transformed the habitat into a miniature galaxy. Then the ships themselves materialized in local space, their impossible geometries defying human perception. They didn't arrive in any conventional sense but simply became present, as if reality had been edited to include them. The largest vessel positioned itself directly above 7, its massive bulk creating gravitational distortions that the station's compensators struggled to handle. Sir, came Dr. Martinez's voice through the comm system, we're being scanned by technologies that are analyzing us down to the quantum level. They know everything about us, our capabilities, our intentions, possibly even our thoughts. Felt a presence touch his mind, vast and ancient beyond human comprehension. The adult Star Dragons were making contact, their consciousness flowing through their bond with their children to examine the human who had claimed the role of their guardian. The experience was overwhelming. Found himself seeing his own actions through alien perception, witnessing the care he had provided through senses that could perceive emotional resonance and spiritual intention. The Star Dragon parents examined every moment of his interaction with their children, every decision he had made, every risk he had accepted for their welfare. When the examination ended, felt a shift in the cosmic atmosphere around the station. The massive ships began changing position, their movements creating patterns that somehow conveyed meaning. Dr. Martinez was right that this was musical communication, but the composition was so complex it required celestial objects as instruments. A new presence entered awareness, different from the children's innocent trust. This was an adult Star Dragon consciousness, powerful enough to reshape reality through will alone, yet tempered by wisdom earned through of struggle against cosmic threats. The communication that followed occurred without words, concepts flowing directly between minds in ways that transcended language barriers. The adult Star Dragons had arrived expecting to find their children traumatized and abused by primitive aliens who couldn't comprehend their needs. Instead, they found 5 young ones who had not only survived, but thrived under human care. More importantly, they found children who had formed genuine family bonds with their human caretakers. The Star Dragons understood the significance of such connections in ways that went beyond simple gratitude, had risked everything to protect beings he barely understood, accepting them as family without expecting anything in return. The judgment, when it came, was swift and absolute. Humanity had passed a test that most species failed. They had shown that moral courage could transcend the boundaries of biology, that love could bridge the gap between radically different forms of consciousness. A small section of the largest vessel opened, and a figure emerged that made his breath catch in his throat. The adult star dragon was magnificent beyond description, its form flowing between solid matter and pure energy in patterns that suggested intelligence operating on cosmic scales. Yet when it moved toward the station, its approach was careful and non-threatening. "Sir," came a voice that spoke directly to his mind, carrying harmonics that touched emotions he didn't know he possessed. "You have cared for our children when you had no obligation to do so. You have fed them from your own resources, protected them with your life, and loved them as your own family. How does your species wish to be repaid for this kindness?" Felt the weight of the moment, understanding that his answer would define humanity's relationship with a species that could traverse galaxies and manipulate fundamental forces. The wrong response could doom his people to eternal isolation, or worse. "Honored parent," he replied, using the formal address the children had taught him, "we ask for nothing except the privilege of continuing to love them. They have become part of our family, and families don't abandon each other." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across cosmic distances. Then, through his bond with the Star Dragon children, felt an explosion of joy so powerful it nearly overwhelmed his human consciousness. The adult Star Dragons had not expected such a response from any species, let alone one as young as humanity. "Sir," the adult Star Dragon continued, "you speak of family bonds between different species as if such things were natural. Among the countless races we have encountered in our flight from the void hunger, yours is the first to demonstrate such capacity for adoption across biological boundaries." Felt a shift in the cosmic currents around them, as if fundamental decisions were being made on scales beyond human comprehension. "What does this mean for our peoples?" "It means, brave knight, that humanity has earned something that cannot be taken back or undone. Our children have claimed you as family, and we accept that bond as sacred. From this day forward, your species and ours are connected by ties that transcend mere alliance." Through the habitat windows, could see the Star Dragon children pressing against the barriers, their lights creating patterns of pure happiness. They understood what was happening, knew that their two families were becoming one. "However," the adult Star Dragon continued, its mental voice taking on darker tones, "the void hunger approaches, and even our combined strength may not be sufficient to protect this sector. Are you prepared to stand with us against a threat that has consumed entire galactic arms?" Looked through the observation windows at the 5 young Star Dragons who had changed everything, then at the massive ships that represented hope for countless refugee populations. His answer came without hesitation. "Honored parent, humanity stands ready to defend our family, all of our family, regardless of the cost." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every Star Dragon in the fleet, adult and child of the void hunger, arrived like a wound in reality itself. Sir stood on the command deck of the newly constructed joint defense platform, watching long-range sensors track something that shouldn't exist. Where the cosmic predator passed, stars simply ceased to be, their lights snuffed out as if they had never burned at all. Space itself seemed to rot in its wake, leaving behind regions of absolute nothingness that hurt to contemplate. "Distance to contact, 6 hours and closing," announced Commander from the tactical station. The past 3 months had transformed 7 from a research station into the command center for humanity's first truly interstellar military operation. Star Dragon technology had been integrated with human engineering, creating hybrid systems that both species' previous understanding of physics. Felt the familiar presence of his Star Dragon children through their bond, now strengthened by the arrival of their extended family. The 5 young ones had grown dramatically in the weeks following reunification, their parents' guidance helping them develop abilities that staggered human observers. They could now consciously manipulate space-time on local scales, creating defensive barriers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Sir," came the harmonic voice of Elder Zephyr, the senior Star Dragon who had become humanity's primary liaison with the refugee fleet. "Our children are ready. The question remains whether your people can adapt to combat techniques that require absolute trust between species." Turned from the tactical display to acknowledge the magnificent being floating beside him. Elder Zephyr appeared as a constantly shifting confluence of energy and matter, beautiful beyond human ability to describe, yet somehow approachable. The Star Dragons had evolved beyond traditional physical forms, but they maintained enough material presence to interact with their adopted human family. Elder, we've trained together for months. Our pilots have learned to interface with your navigation systems, our engineers can maintain your fusion cores, and our tactical teams can coordinate with your reality manipulation techniques. We're as ready as we can be. Through the observation windows, the combined fleet stretched across local space in formations that followed Star Dragon mathematical principles rather than human military doctrine. 67 human ships worked alongside 19 massive Star Dragon vessels, their differences in design philosophy creating a patchwork fleet that somehow achieved perfect tactical harmony. The Star Dragons had brought more than ships to the Alliance. They had shared knowledge that revolutionized human understanding of the universe, teaching concepts that allowed their technology to interface directly with spacetime itself. Human engineers had learned to think in 11 dimensions, while Star Dragon youngsters had adapted to human concepts of linear time and causality. Most importantly, they had created something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly integrated military force where two radically different species fought as a single organism. The key was the children, whose bonds with their human caretakers created communication links that allowed instantaneous coordination across the entire fleet. "Contact incoming," announced Lieutenant. "The Void Hunger has entered the outer system. All ships report ready." Moved to the central command station, feeling the weight of responsibility that went far beyond military command. The refugee populations of 17 different species were depending on this battle. If they failed here, if the Void Hunger broke through their defenses, then entire worlds would fall before it could be stopped again. Through his bond with the Star Dragon children, could sense their mixture of determination and fear. They had never fought the Void Hunger directly, but their genetic memories carried the trauma of their species' long flight from the cosmic predator. Today, for the first time they would make a stand instead of running. The enemy appeared first as an absence rather than a presence. Reality began to fray at the edges of the system, stars dimming as their light was somehow consumed before it could travel. The Void Hunger wasn't a creature in any conventional sense, but rather a cosmic phenomenon that devoured the fundamental forces that held the universe together. "All ships implement Formation Zephyr," commanded, using the hybrid tactical protocol developed by their combined species. The human vessels moved to positions that seemed tactically unsound until viewed through Star Dragon mathematics, where their arrangement created geometric patterns that strengthened the fabric of space around them. The Star Dragon ships began to sing, their harmonic emissions creating standing waves in the quantum foam that underlied reality. The children in Habitat 7 added their voices to the chorus, their young but powerful abilities helping to weave a defensive matrix around the fleet. "First contact in 30 seconds, reported Dr. Martinez from the science station. "Energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. This thing operates by consuming the binding forces between atomic particles." Felt Elder Zephyr's presence intensify beside him. "Sir, your people have never faced anything like this. The Void Hunger doesn't destroy matter in ways your science understands. It unravels the mathematical constants that allow matter to exist at all." The battle began not with explosions or energy beams, but with reality itself coming under attack. The Void Hunger manifested as a region of absolute nothingness that expanded through space, consuming everything in its path. Where it touched the outer planets of the system, they simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but retroactively edited from the universe's equations. "All ships engage the Harmony Protocol," ordered. This was the most dangerous part of their battle plan, requiring human and Star Dragon crews to link their consciousness directly through quantum entanglement fields. The risks were enormous, but conventional tactics were useless against an enemy that attacked the fundamental structure of reality. The integration began immediately. Felt his awareness expand as the Star Dragon children shared their enhanced perceptions with him. Suddenly, he could see the battle in 11 dimensions, watching the Void Hunger's attack patterns as geometric distortions in the mathematical foundation of space-time. Through the shared consciousness of the combined fleet, directed a counterattack unlike anything in military history. Human ships provided precisely targeted energy bursts, while Star Dragon vessels wove protective matrices around them. The children used their reality manipulation abilities to strengthen the quantum barriers that kept their allies from being consumed by the cosmic predator. The first clash was devastating. 3 human destroyers and 1 Star Dragon cruiser were caught in a reality collapse that erased them from existence so completely that the surviving crews temporarily forgot they had ever existed. Only the children's perfect memory preserved knowledge of their sacrifice. "Adjusting formation," called out, his voice carrying across multiple dimensions through the shared consciousness link. "Pattern Delta 7, implement reality anchors." The fleet reorganized with fluid precision, human tactical training combining with Star Dragon intuitive navigation to create movement patterns that conventional understanding. Ships appeared to be in multiple locations simultaneously as they followed courses that existed in parallel dimensional spaces. The Star Dragon children had become the heart of the defense, their abilities growing stronger as the battle intensified. Through his bond with them, could feel their determination to protect both their birth family and their adopted human clan. They sang songs that literally rewrote local physics, creating pockets of stable spacetime where the human vessels could operate safely. "Sir," came Admiral Tor's voice through the quantum communication system, "how are we doing? The readings from here look impossible." Paused to assess the battle through his enhanced perceptions. The Void Hunger was adapting to their defensive strategies, learning to bypass the reality anchors and attack the mathematical foundations that allowed their technology to function. They were holding it back, but barely. "Admiral, we're discovering that fighting this thing requires more than just advanced technology. It requires absolute faith between allied species. The children are teaching us to think like they do, to see reality as something that can be consciously influenced rather than simply exploited." "And can we win?" Felt the honest answer flow through his bond with the Star Dragons, and for a moment his confidence wavered. The Void Hunger had consumed entire galactic arms. Their combined fleet was powerful beyond anything either species had achieved alone, but they were still small compared to the cosmic forces they faced. Then he felt something new through the bond. The Star Dragon children weren't just fighting defensively anymore. They were learning, adapting, growing stronger with each moment of the battle. Their young minds, unburdened by the trauma that limited their elders, were discovering new possibilities for reality manipulation. "Admiral, ask me again in 6 hours. We're about to find out what's possible when love becomes a military tactic." The turning point came when the largest of the Star Dragon children, the one who had first claimed as Papa, made a discovery that changed everything. Instead of simply defending against the Void Hunger's reality-consuming attacks, the young one found a way to reverse the process, feeding the cosmic predator's own energy back into the quantum foundations it was trying to destroy. The technique spread instantly through the shared consciousness link, human crews working in perfect harmony with Star Dragon navigators to implement tactics that required trust beyond anything previously imagined. They weren't just fighting the Void Hunger anymore. They were teaching it that some things in the universe were protected by bonds too strong to be consumed. "Reality stabilization at 93%, reported Dr. Martinez with obvious amazement. "The children have found a way to use the Void Hunger's own attack energy to strengthen local spacetime. They're not just defending against it, they're healing the damage it caused." Felt pride surge through his bond with the Star Dragons, both the children and their proud parents. Humanity had brought something unique to this alliance, the ability to love without reservation, to form family bonds that transcended biological boundaries. Combined with Star Dragon mastery of cosmic forces, that love had become a weapon against the darkness. The Void Hunger, faced with opposition unlike anything it had encountered in its eons of existence, began to withdraw. It had consumed countless civilizations, each fighting with their own species' techniques and technologies. But it had never faced a truly integrated alliance where love and trust had become tactical advantages. "Sir," Elder Zephyr's harmonics carried satisfaction and amazement in equal measure. "Our children have accomplished something that adult Star Dragons thought impossible. They have learned to heal the universe's wounds instead of simply fleeing from them." The battle continued for another 4 hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The combined fleet had found a way to turn the Void Hunger's greatest strength against itself, using the cosmic predator's reality-consuming attacks to strengthen the defenses around everything they were protecting. When the void hunger finally retreated beyond the system's edge, it left behind something unprecedented. A region of spacetime that was actually stronger than before the attack, reinforced by techniques that no single species could have developed alone. "All ships stand down from combat alert," announced, his voice carrying across the dimensional links that now connected the entire fleet. "Damage reports, casualty figures, and tactical analysis in 6 hours. Right now we have a victory to celebrate." Through the observation windows of the command platform, could see the Star Dragon children in Habitat 7, their lights creating patterns of pure joy that seemed to strengthen the very structure of reality around them. They had grown from orphaned refugees to cosmic guardians in the space of a few months, powered by the love of two very different species who had learned to see each other as family. Doctor joined him at the observation deck, her expression reflecting the exhaustion they all felt. "Sir, what happens now? We've proven that the void hunger can be stopped, but there are thousands of other refugee populations out there. Entire species fleeing this thing across the galaxy." Felt the answer flow through his bond with the Star Dragons, a vision of the future that took his breath away. "Doctor, we're going to teach them what we've learned here. Every species the void hunger has scattered, every refugee population hiding in the dark between stars. We're going to show them that running isn't the only option." "You mean?" "I mean we're going to build an alliance that spans the galaxy. Star Dragons and humans together, taking in every refugee species that's willing to learn our techniques. We're going to teach them that love isn't just a feeling, it's a fundamental force that can reshape reality itself." Elder Zephyr's presence intensified beside them, harmonics carrying approval and wonder. "Sir, your species continues to surprise us. Most civilizations see the universe as something to be conquered or survived. Yours sees it as something to be healed." Looked through the habitat windows at 5 Star Dragon children who had claimed him as their father and changed the course of galactic history. Their lights pulsed with contentment and love, emotions so pure they seemed to warm the vacuum of space around them. "Elder Zephyr, we learned everything we know from them. The children taught us that family isn't limited by biology, that love can bridge any gap, and that sometimes the smallest beings can accomplish the greatest things." The Star Dragon children sensed his attention and moved to the viewing windows, pressing their forms against the transparent barriers. Through the bond, felt their happiness at being safe, their excitement about the adventures ahead, and their absolute certainty that their human papa would always protect them. Humanity had passed the greatest test imaginable, proving their worthiness not through conquest but through compassion. The galaxy was full of refugees who had forgotten that some things were worth fighting for, but the children remembered. They would teach other young ones, who would teach their parents, who would rebuild civilizations founded on bonds stronger than species boundaries. The void hunger still lurked in the darkness between stars, but it was no longer the universe's greatest threat. That distinction now belonged to a growing alliance of species who had learned that love, properly applied, could restructure the fundamental forces of reality. And at the center of it all, 5 Star Dragon children continued their games in a habitat built by human hands, their songs carrying hope across dimensions to every corner of the galaxy. They had found their papa, and through him, they had found a future worth building. The real adventure was just beginning.